Good morning, it's 7:20 on Sunday morning. Been a great week for training. I've done all my sessions. I've been back on the Noom as well. I'm the lightest I have been in 2 years. So today I'm doing my long run for Darren, whose name we have added to my shirt, just about there. Still hoping for donations. You can click the link at the bottom in the description if you want to add someone's name to my shirt, either in memory of or for somebody that's survived or is fighting. Make a donation, send me the name, and they'll get added to my shirt. But today we are trying to do a 75-minute run, so let's see how far we can go. Now, Darren has sent me his story to share with you all, but Darren is a little camera shy, bless him. So I have recorded it to go over this video with some footage of the nice scenery that I'm running past. So have a listen, have a learn, and please donate and share. Get your friends to look at it, donate, please. Thanks. The lovely Tom asked if I would mind sharing my little story of my journey with cancer with you all, and here it is. Back in March 2017, we went on our trip of a lifetime to Thailand with our best friends, nearly a month away, having so much fun exploring new places and new cultures, laughing and joking with not a care in the world, and we returned refreshed, tanned, and thousands of photos and many memories to cherish. Roll forward to May, and I began to feel slightly odd. I couldn't put my finger on it or what was wrong. I felt slow. The one moment that sticks in my mind was when my partner was doing a cabaret show in Reading. As normal, Scott runs around like a lunatic during his shows, and he does quick changes. This one change that he did, where he returned to the stage, was quite far from the changing area, so with seconds to go, he ran out half-clothed before the music ended. And as I followed, he shouted for his wig, of all things, that he had forgotten. And as I have done for previous 16+ years, I returned to get it. But something was different in me. I walked. Normally I would run. Not that I couldn't run. I just walked, there and back, and he looked at me and said, "What took you so long?" I didn't know. I didn't know why I didn't run back and give it to him. I just had no energy in me, no oomph. Then I began to have a temperature and night sweats and cold sweats. The bed used to be wet from them. I just used to take paracetamol and brush it off as if it was nothing. I continued, more night sweats, and I just kept taking paracetamol to bring down my fever. Sadly, on the 18th of May, we had to say goodbye to our doggie of 12 years, and on that morning I contacted my doctor. I managed to get an appointment that afternoon and explained everything to her. I said I felt old, I had aches in my hips and no energy, as well as the temperature and the night sweats, and I had lost weight. She did my bloods and I left. She would contact me when the results came back. The very next day, she called me at 10:30 a.m. and told me to get to an A&E, as my bloods were rock bottom and she was extremely concerned. In my results, it was showing low readings that were indicating my body was fighting an infection. I was discharged until the Monday for more bloods, and still no sign where the infection was. All physical visual tests were okay, no lumps or bumps or swelling. All my glands were okay, my stomach felt fine, my kidneys were okay, and my liver felt good. There was concern I may have picked up something from our trip to Thailand, as all results were okay, so infectious diseases were contacted. I was tested for malaria and various other Asian diseases, some of which had to be sent off for analysis. I had CT scans, ultrasound, all okay. An MRI booked, more bloods, and still indications of an infection somewhere in my body. I was then booked to have a bone marrow biopsy on my hip and another MRI on my liver, while being told that some of my blood work on the Asian diseases could take up to 6 weeks to come back. My white blood count now was 2, and I was still having temperatures and night sweats and shivering, which is called rigor. A rigor is an episode of shaking or exaggerated shivering which can occur with a high fever. At times the rigor events were so bad I would be shaking uncontrollably, so Scott would lay on top of me and hold me tight, trying to suppress the shakes, but it didn't work. Despite eating well, I'd lost nearly 2 stone. On the 17th of June, preliminary results had produced nothing. I had tests for melanoma. Neutrophils were dangerously low at 0.8, markers still showing signs of infection, biopsy done on my hip, and still no answers. It just went on and on, in and out of hospital, but strangely I felt fine. A little tired, but that was all. I didn't feel ill, which puzzled the doctors even more. On the 22nd of June, I had a biopsy done on my liver in 3 places and kept in hospital for a couple of days. On the 11th of July, I had a phone call to come down to the hospital. It was normal for me then, so many bloods taken, I didn't think anything of it. I even said to Scott that he doesn't need to come as it's just routine, but he insisted, and I'm so glad he did. We were taken into the doctor's office where we were told that I'd been diagnosed with Hodgkin lymphoma. It was devastating, that word, cancer, the unknown. We broke down in tears, holding each other, and then the questions. What will happen? Will I die? What treatment? How do we cope? The list goes on. The only positive was that with Hodgkin lymphoma, there's a high chance of getting it cured. It was the only thing that gave us hope. The following days were a complete blur. The hardest of all was having to tell my mum. She never showed how upset she was in front of me, but I knew she was. She would always have a smile, listening to everything that was going on intensely. The same with Scott. When I was laying in bed, shivering with rigour, with a temperature and sweating, I would hear him break down in another room and then gather himself and come to me. With a smile, a joke, a piss take. Scott was amazing. My rock, my soulmate and my love. Hurting in front of him, but getting so much from him. On the 20th of June, I had my PET scan, which eventually came back to confirm that I had stage 4 Hodgkin lymphoma. The scan showed it was in my neck, liver, lungs, spleen, and when the bone marrow biopsy came back, it was confirmed it was also in my bone marrow. It was planned for me to start chemotherapy on the 25th of July, and on the 22nd, 23rd, I was taken into A&E again with a high temperature and rigour episode. I was given 3 bags of fluid, a bag of antibiotics, and 2 blood transfusions. Chemotherapy began on the 26th, and it felt amazing to be starting this treatment, though it was going to be going on for 6 months, every 2 weeks. Scott was by my side again, and as we neared the final dose of chemo going through, my temperature started rising, and I began with rigour again, and the shakes got worse and worse as Scott was trying to hold me down, the nurse trying to hold my arm and keep me from pulling the needle out. Finally, the last drop went in, the shakes eventually died down again, and after 2 days and the doctor telling me my infection marker was down to 300 to 120, it was decided I would be allowed to go home. Brighton Pride came, and I was gutted not to be able to see Scott perform on stage in the cabaret tent. I drove him down and dropped him off, and then I went home. I felt cold, so I closed the windows, had a bath, and I picked Scott up at 5 p.m. and went for a siesta. We were due to have a pride party that night with friends, but as I woke up about 6:30, my temperature had again risen to 41.2 degrees, and so I went straight to A&E again. We eventually found the source of an infection, and that was an abscess. Well, that was all I needed. So after tons of fluid, 2 bags of blood, bag of platelets, and IV antibiotics all week, both doctor and surgical team agreed that the abscess did not need draining and were happy to send me home with another week of antibiotics, then an appointment for the following Tuesday for my chemo to be resumed after a 2-week delay. The hair loss was quick. Not that I had loads, but it still upset me. I remember sitting in the bath and washing my hair and seeing all the little strands of hair on my hands. I cried, we cried, and then I moved on, dealt with and move on. Then I went hat shopping. It was summer and I need hats. I got 2 fabulous ladies' hats, they made me laugh, and also some caps. I think as well it was to cover up that I had lost my hair and my eyebrows and my eyelashes and my beard and my chest hair and, well, the rest. I was bald of any hair on my body. But I didn't wear the hats much in the end. I was proud of it. I wasn't going to hide it, and I was going to own it. Part of the chemo and the following days was having to inject myself. 5 days of self-injecting GCSF, which was to boost the bone marrow and to get it to produce white blood cells, which in turn helps fight infection. The downside was achy bone pain to follow, and a bad back is the only real side effect I had, as well as the bad wind. But chemo carried on uneventful until I was back in hospital with a high temperature again. But this was down to a side effect of the chemo, a few bags of fluid and a bag of antibiotics, and I was on my way again. We were very open on Facebook with regular updates from me and Scott. We felt it was important for us to share what was going on, as well as telling and informing other people. So many people were on that journey with me, and the love and support shown to us both was incredible and something that we could never repay. Facebook, as much as people moan about it, was a release for us, to be able to talk about things and not hush-hush everything. Growing up, cancer was never mentioned, never discussed, even if family had it. These days, it's good to talk. It needs to be talked about, and there's nothing wrong with sharing that with the world. It gave me hope, and other people too. I had my chemo at the Sussex Cancer Centre at the Royal Sussex County Hospital in Brighton, every 2 weeks for 3 to 4 hours at a time for 6 months, in the care of the most wonderful, caring nurses you could ever meet. So happy and smiling and having to do the hardest job, seeing people at their worst and trying to help, and being part of the journey for so many. I could never thank them enough for everything that they did for me and for Scott. On the 9th of October, I received the results from my first PET scan since starting chemo, and it was amazing news. I was responding really well to the chemo, and the scan was showing significant reduction in the cancer. The doctor decided on removing one of the chemo drugs, as this one can damage the lungs the longer you're on it, and I didn't need to be on that longer than needed. We were both over the moon and crying with happiness. I was halfway through and 7 more cycles to go. I was introduced early on to Macmillan, offering advice, counselling, a quiet space in the lovely Horizon Centre. We didn't use much of their services at first because I felt I was doing okay. I was comfortable with what was happening with me and my treatment, and financially we didn't want to use it as we could still be okay. Scott was still working. My use of Macmillan came later on during chemo, when the sickness that had crept in was beginning to really get me down. It was even something I tried to keep off Facebook, because I didn't want it to be something that would make someone else who may have to go through chemo have something to worry about. The sickness pills I was given didn't seem to work. I was given every anti-sickness pill going, but nothing would stop the feeling. It was 3 months in when I really began suffering with the constant sickness. I'd only been sick once on chemo, and that was the first ever one, but the feeling of sickness stayed with me until a few weeks after completing my chemo. I coped with everything apart from that, so I went to Macmillan and had acupuncture. Anything was worth a try. On the 12th of January, I had my final chemo session, and I cannot begin to tell you how good that felt. My body was battered, but that was the end of it. My nausea was constant, my fingernails were green and falling off, only disguised by the nail varnish Scott used to paint my nails with. My 2 big toenails were coming off, and I had had enough. But I made it. I came out of the cancer centre, and there, outside waiting, were our best friends with balloons. I cried, we cried, and then we went to the pub. At the end of February, I went and had my PET scan to hopefully make sure all the cancer had gone. Also another bone marrow biopsy. And like spring, my body began to wake up again. My hair was growing back on my head, all fluffy like a baby. My eyebrows started growing, and my eyelashes, and my stubble. I'd enjoyed 6 months of not shaving, but alas, it was no more. The nausea had gone, and although still being tired, my energy levels were beginning to rise. On the 6th of March, the day before my birthday, I got the results back of the PET scan. 99.99999% clear of cancer. Apart from one 0.04mm hotspot that was still glowing on the back of my left pelvis. The doctor explained that this could just be the very last cancer cell dying, as it was not glowing as bright as Hodgkin lymphoma should. So annoyingly, I had to wait another 3 months until I could have another PET scan to confirm all was good. One part of the bone biopsy had come back and showed no cancer in the bone marrow fluid. I just needed the final bone itself to be clear. 1 week later, I was good to fly. With the doctor's letter in hand, we flew to Gran Canaria with the besties for the most amazing week away. It was nice to be free again. The 15th of March, the results from my bone biopsy came back, and there was no lymphoma there. It had all gone. Gone from my neck, my liver, my lungs, my pelvis, and my bone marrow, and the bone itself. Wow. On the 25th of May, I went and had hopefully my final PET scan. and I got the results on the 5th of June at 3:30 p.m. It was gone. I was cancer-free. We cried again. And such a huge relief, a massive weight off my shoulders. Throughout all of this, the doctors would tell me that they aim for 100% curability of this cancer if it does not come back within 2 years, and I was very lucky that my cancer was Hodgkin's lymphoma. Not a day passed me by when I didn't think how lucky I was to have the cancer I had, as weird as that is to say. Not everybody gets the opportunity like me to be rid of their cancer. I have been very lucky. We always wanted to be very open about this journey and share the highs and lows as I started my chemotherapy and the journey ahead. Getting people to talk about cancer, to share stories, to raise awareness and show how much support and love there is out there. And the response was overwhelming from all of you and for both of us. And having that support and love gave me even more positivity and determination to fight this. Our NHS is brilliant. The professionalism of all the nurses, doctors, consultants, carers, admin has been nothing but amazing. The chemotherapy nurses at the Sussex Cancer Unit are angels, all of them. Always smiling, answering questions, giving you support and 100% dedicated to their jobs. The amazing Macmillan Horizons Centre that offers counselling, complementary therapies, welfare advice, practical support, a lovely cafe and amazing volunteers is something they should all be proud of. And all provided through donations from the public. I couldn't have done it without them. So here we are in 2021, and I have just had my 3rd year in remission. And again, the doctors always said if it doesn't come back within 2 years, then we are confident it won't come back at all. So fingers crossed. I will still be checked upon for another couple of years, but apart from that, it's good to be here. With the help of a lot of people, I am still here, living life to the full with my love and never taking anything for granted. So much so that we are opening a coffee shop. Who would have thought that 4 years ago? But half of us will experience cancer and need people like Macmillan directly. The rest of us will probably have need of their support at some point. So please, donate what you can. So that's it. That's my 75-minute run. Back on track. Thrilled. So I hope you enjoyed, I hope you learnt something listening to Darren's story. Thank you so much, Darren, for sharing it. Please donate. Add your name to my shirt or someone else's name to my shirt. Even £1 will do it. And thanks to Lou and Rosemary for being this week's donors, much appreciated. And I've had some lovely messages from a couple of other runners from Team Macmillan. I'm getting a lot of motivation reading everyone's messages on the Team Macmillan Facebook group. So if anyone's watching this needing that little bit of motivation, we can and we will. I mean, look at me. I'm actually going to be able to do this. So can you. Thanks everyone. Bye.